Her Excellency Julie J. Chung, the Ambassador of the United States of Sri Lanka, Rear Admiral Peter A. Gumatatao, Director of the Daniel K. Inouye Asia-Pacific Center for Strategic Studies, DKI APCSS, Honolulu, Hawaii, then Professor Sham Tekwani, also APCSS, Dr. R.E. Nathan, Indo-Pacific Coordinator, and the U.S. Embassy officials who are present here, Mrs. Dhammika Vijayasinghe, Additional Secretary to Ministry of Defense and officials of the Ministry of Defense, all the distinguished diplomatic staff from the various embassies and high commissions, state officials representing their ministries, rectors of KDU, Deputy Vice Chancellors of KDU, Dean Faculty of Defense and Strategic Studies, and all Deans of KDU and Directors, Editor of the publication and Head of Department of Strategic Studies, Dr. Harinder Vidanage, all the distinguished guests, authors, and respected invitees. A very good evening to all of you. I am delighted to welcome you to this splendid event of marking the first anniversary of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Strategy and book launch organized by the General Sir John Kotalala Defense University together with the U.S. Embassy in Colombo. In fact, this is the first policy publication of this magnitude carried out by our newly established press and the publisher of KDU. Sri Lanka-US relations date back to the 1700s, and American people had been visiting the island since 1788 as spice traders and whalers. In the contemporary era, US-Sri Lanka relations are based on shared democratic values and rule-based regional and international order. Sri Lanka supports and encourages the free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Event of this nature promotes inclusivity among the nations. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the US-Sri Lanka diplomatic relations. It is my utmost pleasure that the US Embassy and KDU could launch this valuable publication on such a memorable juncture. I consider it's a great privilege to welcome Her Excellency Julie J. Chung, the Ambassador of US to this occasion. The Indo-Pacific Seminar last year organized by the KDU and US Embassy was, I guess, the first public appearance of Her Excellency after taking over the new assignment as the US Ambassador in Sri Lanka. Since then, she developed a very cordial relationship with KDU and always supported the KDU initiatives. There are many more initiatives being taken up, and we are moving up with such initiatives to develop KDU also. I'm glad that the US Embassy in Colombo and KDU worked closely with a good understanding to organize the Indo-Pacific Seminar last year. The launch of the book is an extension of last year's event. Over the past year, the Department of Strategic Studies of the KDU and the US Embassy Office of Indo-Pacific Affairs worked tirelessly to produce this valuable publication jointly. A publication of this nature simply highlights the Indo-Pacific strategy of the President Biden's from the United States government standpoint. The policy research papers from South Asian scholars are also highlighting the regional perspectives that provides nuance and balanced point of views. The pragmatic challenges and the opportunities presented through this strategy are among the key variables that had been researched by the authors. KDU, as Sri Lanka's only defense university, can be proud of producing quality and insightful policy analysis that will definitely assist policymakers in the United States, in Sri Lanka, and in the larger Indo-Pacific region. These ideas will help to shape their opinions and decision-making through this publication. Publications of this nature helps especially when it comes to understanding the role of island states and their strategic value. We sincerely hope many more publications like this will follow on in this future, as there is a dire need to develop a culture of policy research in our country. We highly value the presence of former Commander of the Pacific Fleet and the present Director of the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Strategic Studies, APCSS, Rear Admiral Peter A. Gumatatao, to grace our event as the keynote speaker. The Sri Lanka APCS connection is a long-standing one. In fact, today in the morning, he had a terrific address to our cadets and academia at KDU, and he had a very good interaction between the academia and KDU undergraduates. The APCS, it was very insightful, very educative and informative address to our students. And thank you so much, Admiral Pete. The APCSs, through the past decades have produced a number of graduates in security and strategic studies who held the top brasses of Sri Lanka military. And here also we could see some of the ex-Navy commanders also here. And most of them have been part of APCSS. Sri Lankan officers, those who studied at the APCSS, always cherish their memories about the aloha hospitality and cozy experiences of the Waikiki. The KDU is looking forward to work more closely with the APCS and produce good graduates who can serve the nation in the future. It is indeed a great honor to host you as the keynote speaker of this memorable event. I would like to welcome ambassadorial and ministerial staffs who took time off from their busy schedules to support this venture by being here. Your support is always a blessing for KDU in all our future endeavors. Finally, I would like to welcome all the distinguished guests who took trouble to be present here on a Monday and to make this occasion a colorful event. Your long-standing friendship with us is the strength that drives us to seek new frontiers. I wish the organizers all the best and the participants an eventful knowledge and enjoyment. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the event.
Hi everyone, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It does feel like deja vu, as it was about 1 year ago that I was here giving my very first speech as the U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka. I really want to thank and recognize the General Sir John Kotelawala Defense University, KDU, for hosting this event, and our conference organizers, Dr. Harinda Vidanage, Dr. Sanat De Silva, and Lieutenant Colonel L.R. Amarasekara of KDU's Department of Strategic Studies for their hard work in bringing us all together. I'm especially gratified to see all the KDU students. I saw them as I walked in here in their bright uniforms, as you represent the future where Sri Lanka is most secure and prosperous. Excellencies, participants, Vice Chancellor, Major General Melinda Paris, as we met in this very same spot a year ago to discuss how the Biden-Harris administration was charting a new course forward in the Indo-Pacific, I outlined how the 5 core elements of the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy, or IPS, encompass our shared vision for an Indo-Pacific that is free, open, prosperous, connected, resilient, and secure. I noted that while the strategy is not a military or security alliance, it does include taking a hard look at behavior by countries that undermine our shared values. And I describe the IPS as our shared vision for the Indo-Pacific, because I believe that this vision is shared by my country and many countries in the region, including Sri Lanka. And I've noticed several of my diplomatic colleagues here as well from several missions. I know that many countries have also their own Indo-Pacific strategies that align with many of our shared values. So to be clear, this is not about choosing countries. It's about choosing values. It's great to be with you again to discuss the IPS at its one-year anniversary and to launch a publication that includes various discussions and papers from that conference a year ago. The title is A Shared Vision for the Indo-Pacific. It reflects the fact that the IPS encompasses a vision for the entire region, and in addition to including remarks offered at the conference, it also includes some of the key policy papers written by panelists who joined the discussion last year. Now, I should note that the views in those papers are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the US or KDU. Still, I'd like to highlight some of the points from just a few of the papers. Chulani Atanayake stresses the importance of the Indo-Pacific region in her paper, describing it as a key theater of engagement in the 21st century. The U.S. National Security Strategy, which was published in October of last year, echoes this exact point, noting that the Indo-Pacific fuels much of the world's economic growth and will be the epicenter of the 21st century geopolitics, and that no region will be of more significance to the world. It's also important to keep in mind that what happens in the Indo-Pacific can impact the entire globe, and this particularly applies to Sri Lanka, which, as we all know, sits next to some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. And that's no small responsibility. As Ganeshan Mignaraja points out in his paper, he says the Indian Ocean's transformation into one of the world's busiest east-west trade and industrial corridors on the back of Asia's global rise is a developmental success story of the 21st century. Maritime trade in the Indian Ocean carries 2/3 of global oil shipments and 1/3 of global bulk cargo. Now, in addition to this month being the one-year anniversary of the IPS, it is also the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the United States and Sri Lanka. The relationship between our two countries is broad and deep, and at its very heart is our shared commitment to people, progress, and partnership. As George Cook emphasizes in his paper, this relationship also includes a commitment to shared democratic values. Cook states that the future of U.S.-Sri Lankan relations rests firmly in the democratic arena. It is to the advantage of both countries that democratic values have long been entrenched in their respective systems and need to be relied upon at all times. No doubt, we all know democracies can be messy at times, but the core foundations of a democracy, checks and balances, independent institutions, free and fair elections, all of these things make a country stronger. Earlier this month, one of the State Department's highest-ranking officials, Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, visited Colombo for discussions in which we reinforced our commitment as a bilateral partner across a broad spectrum of shared interests. In 2022 alone, the U.S. invested over $2 billion in foreign assistance for the Indo-Pacific region and plans to allocate billions more in 2023. This builds upon, and the $2 billion is, of course, accumulative over our entire relationship, not just 2022. This builds upon the total of $11 billion we have invested in the Indo-Pacific region since 2018. Notably, here in Sri Lanka, we've announced nearly $270 million in new U.S. support since last June to bolster Sri Lanka's economy and help ensure that children have food at school and that farmers have fertilizer they need for successful crops. We are just about to welcome another shipment of the TSP fertilizer to Sri Lanka in the coming weeks that will be here in time ahead of the Yala season. Now, let me take a few minutes to broadly outline how we are doing in accomplishing our shared vision for an Indo-Pacific that is free and open, prosperous, connected, resilient, and secure. A year ago, I noted that a free and open Indo-Pacific is one where there is freedom of navigation for ships across the open seas. As I mentioned earlier, this is especially critical for Sri Lanka, given its location. Freedom of navigation allows Sri Lanka to effectively leverage its geostrategic positions and has helped the Colombo port to become one of the busiest in the region. And that's why the U.S.'s promotion of freedom of navigation helps support a free and open Indo-Pacific and directly aligns with Sri Lanka's interests. When I spoke at this conference last year, I noted that Secretary Blinken has described freedom as the ability to write our own futures, to have a say in what happens in your community and your country. And now over the past year, we've seen how some of the activities, the Moscow senseless invasion of Ukraine has attacked this most basic international principle of freedom and sovereignty, which is why the United States has stood with the people of Ukraine against this brutal act of aggression, and we will continue to stand with the people of Ukraine. In the past year, the U.S. also worked closely with partners throughout the Indo-Pacific to ensure a region remains open and accessible by promoting democracy, fair rule of law, free and open media, and a vibrant community of civil society organizations, schools, universities, and people across the region. Our IPS also includes a commitment to driving Indo-Pacific prosperity. I think we can all agree that working together to build a prosperous Indo-Pacific is more critical now than ever when we consider the economic challenges Sri Lanka is currently facing. And we're also reminded that good economic governance and good political governance go hand in hand. So let me be clear, the U.S. is Sri Lanka's partner and stands with Sri Lanka as it navigates through this difficult time. The U.S. is also Sri Lanka's largest single country export market, accounting for $2.8 billion of the $11 billion in goods Sri Lanka exports annually. With this number growing even during COVID and Sri Lankan companies exporting to the U.S. accounting for more than 180,000 Sri Lankan jobs. I'm glad to see the Executive Director of American Chamber of Commerce here today. And that's why the U.S. is fully committed to supporting Sri Lanka as you navigate the process of obtaining support from the IMF, and I hope that we can very quickly see a commitment on specific and credible financing assurances from all major countries invested in Sri Lanka's future to help Sri Lanka get back to the path to economic recovery. I would also note that while Sri Lanka's natural resources and entrepreneurial spirit create enormous economic potential, but to fully realize that potential, it's critical to have a business environment that is transparent and fully inclusive. Because beyond just the immediate economic recovery, the longer-term open investment climate will be key to lasting prosperity. This is what U.S. companies, foreign companies, tell me all the time. And that's why the U.S. is also committed to support policies that strengthen financial institutions, public finances, and foster sustainable and inclusive economic growth, and help attract more international investment. More broadly, in the past year, we've helped drive regional prosperity by deepening our economic engagement in the region, provided an affirmative model for economic cooperation through the launch of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. In May of 2022, President Biden launched the IPEF with 13 regional partners, representing 40% of the global GDP, to set an affirmative vision for economic cooperation and to address the major challenges of the 21st century, including supply chain resilience, digital transformation, and a clean energy transition. Just last month, the US and Japan co-hosted the 5th Indo-Pacific Business Forum with over 1,000 virtual and 270 in-person participants comprised of senior officials and business leaders in Tokyo to build connections and partnerships, exchange best practices, and stimulate innovative thinking on issues such as supply chains, clean energy, and digital infrastructure. The U.S. will also serve as the host of APEC later this year, with the theme Creating a Resilient and Sustainable Future for All, advancing practical economic policies as the region emerges from COVID-19 and collectively seeks to address supply chain shocks, struggling health systems, food insecurity, and climate change. Economic growth also calls for us to continue to build connections within but beyond the Indo-Pacific. But the connections between the United States and Sri Lanka run far deeper than just economics. For 75 years, our two countries have had a strong relationship. For 70 of those years, the U.S.-Sri Lanka Fulbright program has supported over 1,100 senior researchers, professors, and students to travel between our two countries on scholarly exchanges, and for more than 60 of those years, USAID has been there supporting the people of Sri Lanka to improve their country's development pathway through more than $2 billion in U.S. assistance. We even provide training to the next generation of Sri Lankan leaders through our amazing youth forum, who we just gathered in person from across the country in Colombo just a few weeks ago, and provide English language training to high school students across the country. We've also worked broadly to build connections within and beyond the region, strengthening and partnering with multi-government organizations, including the launch of the Partners in the Blue Pacific, deepening our relationship with ASEAN, partnering with Japan to co-host the 5th Indo-Pacific Business Forum, and working together with allies and partners through our long-standing relationships, as well as new formats such as the Quad and the US-EU Indo-Pacific consultations. As we've learned during the past few years, collaboration is key to building resiliency. And as we face the global challenge of climate change, we will all need to work on this together. That's why the U.S. is partnering with Sri Lanka in programs that encourage the deployment of renewable energy and increase Sri Lanka's ability to adapt to climate change in ways that contribute to sustained, inclusive, market-based growth. Regionally, we promoted resiliency by providing over 274 million doses of safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines and helping partners prepare for future health emergencies through joint initiatives such as the Indo-US Vaccine Action Program and support for the ASEAN Emergency Operations Center. We're also mobilizing billions of dollars in clean energy, clean air, climate resilience throughout the region, including through Clean Power Asia, the US-India Strategic Clean Energy Partnership, and the South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy. A key component of our bilateral relationship has been and continues to be a strong security partnership. As threats and challenges evolve, our security approach must also evolve. But regardless of what we face, our greatest strength is and will continue to be the alliances and partnerships which support our Indo-Pacific vision. Our bilateral relationship is strengthened each time we conduct an exercise together, exchange subject matter experts on issues such as maritime security, disaster relief and logistics, or transfer critical equipment and platforms. Just last month, we held our CARAT, the Cooperation Afloat Readiness and Training exercises. And CARAT is the largest bilateral military engagement between the U.S. and Sri Lanka, and one that we in the U.S. consider critical to the security of the Indian Ocean region. I was, of course, particularly excited to see the Sri Lankan Navy ships, Gajabahu and Vayabahu, participate in the exercise. Both ships are U.S. donations, now proudly in the hands of Sri Lankans. The Vijayabahu was just commissioned in a beautiful ceremony last November and sailed here in one of the longest voyages in the history of Sri Lanka's Navy, and as a testament to our commitment to Sri Lanka's maritime security and sovereignty. It was great to see how CARAT contributed to the deepening of ties in so many diverse ways. For example, our militaries conducted water purification training to help Sri Lanka ensure that its citizens will have access to clean drinking water in the event of a natural disaster. We also held an important Women, Peace, and Security event where service members from both countries had the opportunity to address the many ways that women are increasingly making an impact in the military domain. To help illustrate the breadth of our security relationship, I might note that later this year, we'll be working with Sri Lanka on an environmental security conference where the links between security and climate change will be discussed and how we can work together in this arena more critically. For 3/4 of a century, we have nurtured the relationship between our countries, and it has strengthened and it has grown. As that growth continues through large-scale bilateral military exercises like CARAT, and through events like this where we all come together to share information and ideas, I am confident we will see the emergence of a stronger and more resilient Sri Lanka that is increasingly capable of protecting its sovereignty and developing strong institutions that will enable prosperity for all Sri Lankan people. And when I talk about sovereignty, I talk about respect. The United States is committed in the long term to work with our allies and partners to make that vision of respect, a reality. Many countries and people in the Indo-Pacific share that vision for the region, and when we work together, we can build a better future together. The United States knows that by working together with our partners, we can ensure a prosperous and secure future for all countries and communities in the Indo-Pacific. And it's critical that we unite to address the Indo-Pacific's historic challenges and seize the opportunities of this 21st century. Before I close my remarks, I'd like to say how pleased I am to be joined here today in offering remarks by two very distinguished colleagues, Major General Melinda Perez, KDU's Vice Chancellor, who has been a driving force behind organizing this event, and Rear Admiral retired Peter Gumatautau, Director of the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. I made Admiral Gumatautau pledge to me that he will come visit Sri Lanka, as his last visit was back in 2019 before COVID. So he has fulfilled his promise to me. DKI APCSS has provided training opportunities to hundreds of members of Sri Lanka's security personnel, and in doing so, played an important role in our strong security partnership. I opened my remarks by saying that we share a common vision, and I hope that these remarks have outlined that vision, and perhaps more importantly, shared some ideas about what a partnership for a free and open, prosperous, connected, resilient, and secure Indo-Pacific can achieve for all of us. So here's to the next 75 years of our work together, focused on people, progress, and partnership. Thank you.
Vice Chancellor, Major General Melinda Perez, KDU Vice Chancellor, Ambassador Julie Chung, as well as the head of the Department of Strategic Studies, Dr. Haringa Vidanaga, to all the distinguished guests here, and to the faculty and the students of KDU, I wish you all Ayubawang, Vanakkam, good afternoon, and most especially from the beautiful island of Hawaii, aloha. So it's not lost with you that for some reason, my good brother here, Major General Perez, saw fit to put a wonderful and a beautiful lei on me. I must add, it is a beautiful lei, and it's very fitting. And I guess the best way I can describe this is a feeling of welcome, right? They have a phrase in Hawaii, e komo mai, welcome. And when I got here in 2019 for the Gaul Dialogue, and I spent some time here, I had the same welcome, a very genuine, heartfelt welcome that I received when I went and visited KDU, and I received this lace. So thank you, it's an honor, and I love wearing it. I hope the folks back in Oahu see this, they go, wow, that's a beautiful orchid. I also want to give a shout out to the Sri Lankan DKI APCSS alumni I think both Major General Perez and also Ambassador Chung have mentioned that there's quite a few of them here, and I was very fortunate to meet a lot of them at KDU. And yesterday, as I was flying out here, I met a Sri Lankan alumni at the airport on the same gate, on the same flight. He was very proud to see that I was coming back out. As you have already heard many times over about DKI APCSS, I do work for Secretary of Defense Austin under the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Specifically, I work for the Assistant Secretary of Defense, the Dr. Eli Ratner. But also, an update, there's been an added regional center to our Ohana, our family of regional centers, and that's the Ted Stevens Center. The Ted Stevens Center is home based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and is focused up in the Arctic. I'm very honored to be here and to be even labeled as the keynote speaker, because I firmly believe what was truly had to be said was already said by Ambassador Chung as well as Major General Perez. So I will try to be not redundant, and I will try to be short. Earlier today, I had the distinct pleasure and honor to come to KDU and not just interact with the faculty, but to be able to talk directly to the future leaders of Sri Lanka as well as other countries. And as I talked to them about it, the first thought I had was talking about the strategic implications of the Indo-Pacific strategy as it relates to Sri Lanka. That was actually a really exceptional title, General, because what does it mean to me? How does it apply to me? I hear that so many times when I go around the region. Just recently, I had come from Korea, and in fact, Ambassador Chung was at our center when I was out in Korea, and they had just unveiled their Indo-Pacific strategy and their views of what bonds us as like-minded partners, allies and partners, regarding the principles we talked about with sovereignty, individual liberty, transparency, working together like-minded, protecting the freedom of navigation and other things that bond us. And I thought for this occasion, I thought about the book. I thought about the year ago when we were sitting in a webinar as we unveiled the Indo-Pacific strategy and had this discussion. I thought about the theme of the KDU book that you're all about to receive if you don't have it already, and compare that with the main theme of what the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy says. And this is what I told the KDU folks. I start with the KDU Indo-Pacific strategy book and what it said. It simply said, emphatically it says, that in order to maximize optimally this Indo-Pacific strategy, it must incorporate the words of comprehensive and inclusive. And it also must focus not just on the strategic needs of larger countries, but to countries, the strategic needs of countries like Sri Lanka and many other partners out there that have sometimes big issues, but also very tailored issues to the region and to the country itself. I thought a lot about that, because one of the key themes that the Indo-Pacific strategy talks about right off the bat is the inclusiveness factor of having to work with allies and partners. You see, the Indo-Pacific strategy starts out with a commitment. It says the United States is committed to promoting a free and open, connected, prosperous, resilient, and secure Indo-Pacific region. I have heard that said in so many words time and after again, not just by the United States, but many countries within the region of the Indo-Pacific, as well as countries outside the Indo-Pacific. And so that's why, as I think about the two themes of the KDU book that focuses on IPS, and I think about the Indo-Pacific strategy that the U.S. had put out recently and updated, they are very complementary. Very complementary. That is repeated over and over again with many countries that I have visited. The interconnectedness of both these themes above the countries of the United States and Sri Lanka, I thought was eloquently articulated by Vice Chancellor Major General Melinda Perez in his opening address a year ago. And your remarks are included in this book. I'm very grateful for that, General. And this is what he said, and I apologize for reading it, but it underscores what I am trying to say about the complementariness of like-minded nations. I am of the conviction that the Indo-Pacific's future depends on choices that respective countries make in the contemporary security atmosphere. The decisive decade before us will determine if the region can confront and address traditional and non-traditional security concerns, reveal how the world rebuilds, and decide whether we can sustain the principles of openness, transparency, and inclusivity that have fueled the region's success. His opening remarks, he puts an exclamation point by saying that this can only be achieved by working together. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Working together, taking our combined capacities to meet security challenges of the 21st century and seizing the opportunities before us. That last part I paraphrased a little bit, General, so I didn't take that last part verbatim, but it was exceptional. It's very interesting to know, ladies and gentlemen, in that opening remarks that Major General Melinda Perez said a year ago, is just as germane today as it could have been 10 years ago, as it will be in the foreseeable future. At DKI APCSS, in the 5 years that I've been the director, I have grown so much. I've grown so much as a person that has given my life so much to my country to ensure that generations to come of Americans can enjoy what I've enjoyed. Growing up in a very, very humble setting in the beautiful island of Guam, to have been given the privilege to serve my country. But when I took over as the director, little did I realize, despite the number of times that I have been out to sea, to the Arabian Gulf, to the Indian Ocean, to the South China Sea, to the East China Sea, the Sea of Japan, Philippine Sea, any sea you may have it, I probably was there. That I knew so little about the complexity of our world. And it was through the eyes and lens of the allies and partners that came openly, respectfully, and inclusively to the center did I learn. Did I learn that the need to cooperate and work together is paramount. It is imperative that we work together. So I close with this thought, and it's about all of you sitting in this room that dare to choose to make a difference in this world. I close with this thought. I say this to every fellow that graduates at our center. So if you're one of those that is an alumni and has heard it, forgive me, but I have to say it. You see, in trying to make a difference, if you want to go fast, if you want to get things done quickly, show that you've done something while you're here. Well, to be frank, you can do it alone. But I will offer you this. Most of the time, it'll fade. Most of the time, those things that we want to accomplish so fast during our watch will not persist. And so I tell the graduates of the DKI APCSS, the alumni, I said, your real test starts today. Because if you, as security practitioners, not just in the Indo-Pacific region, but of the world, want to make a positive difference, if you really want to go far, if you really want to make an enduring and impactful result and outcome, you must do it together. You must do it as a team. I know it sounds so fundamental, doesn't it? But I think we need to look beyond what makes us different. I think we need to look beyond why people say it's hard. And so I challenge all of us, go beyond the Indo-Pacific strategy. Take the baton and say, why am I uncomfortable and who do I need to talk to so that I can better understand how we can get to solutions so we can truly realize the opportunities that the 21st century offers to the region of consequence. Read the Indo-Pacific region. I really, in closing, would like to really thank Ambassador Chung and the U.S. Embassy for being the catalyst to bring me out here again, to be back in beautiful Colombo, beautiful Sri Lanka. I brought my wife the last time I was here. We went to Sigiriya, Kandy, we went to Dambulla, and we just had a beautiful time. She's jealous that I'm here by myself this time. It is a beautiful country with beautiful people, with the beautiful culture and some awesome leis. Yeah. I also want to give my special thanks to Vice Chancellor Melinda Perez and his KDU team for daring to have a vision to sponsor an initiative such as this. As Ambassador Chung mentioned, this year marks an important time of Sri Lanka's journey and discovery, 75 years of being free. We are honored to be here to share that with you, sir. Like-minded free countries like the United States and many others. We wish you all fair winds and following seas, and we look forward to building the future together along with you and take the opportunities, seize it, and become one as working together. Thank you all very much. Mahalo nui loa.
Thank you, Arun. Ambassador Julie Chung, Vice Chancellor of the KDU, General Melinda Perez, the keynote speaker of the day, Admiral Gumatatau, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Additional Secretary of the Defense Ministry, all senior serving and retired military officers, my colleagues at the KDU who are in the admin and academic leadership, as well as distinguished guests, my colleagues at the department, students, friends. It's indeed an honor to address this gathering. It's exactly a year since we had the first kind of conference. So what I'm going to do is not to speak about the content of the book. I think all the three speakers, including my Vice Chancellor, I think elaborated eloquently about what's in the book. Ambassador went into quote some of the authors. And of course, Admiral Gumatatau also referred to the book. So what I'm going to do is not the contextual analysis of the book, but I want to do three things. One is why the symbolism, how symbolically it is important to KDU, to the US Embassy, to the Indo-Pacific strategy per se, as well as all of us, why it is important. Number two, I wanted to kind of bring a unique aspect of this book, and also wrap it up by saying why it is important to have such a policy-oriented research, as well as a publication that discusses with the ongoing contemporary thing that we have to deal with as from folks from the security, strategic, and international relations community. So the symbolism of the book is that it is the first policy research publication that the KDU Press, the newly established KDU Press under the leadership of General Pieris, who really was keen on establishing a university press. So we have had a couple of publications, but this book is probably the historic first policy research outing. So the importance from there is, as a policy research publication, it provides the KDU, I'm speaking from a KDU perspective first, to kind of engage and interact with contemporary important topics and themes that has an impact on Sri Lanka, on the region, as well as towards general international relations, as well as the strategic configuration of our region, as well as repercussions across the world. So a publication from a defense university of this nature is essential and timely. And it also, that is the kind of symbolism this big book brings out, the fact that we have managed as a community of strategists. Sri Lanka does not have a strategic studies department outside of the KDU. So I think it is our primary responsibility as strategists, as well as international relations and security scholars, to bring this kind of conversations out in the open. We need the academic deliberations, we need the academic research, but in the real world context, we really need publications, thinking, focus on policy matters. So I think that in that way, the book, the publication is so significant because it is purely on a policy domain, coming from a defense university. So that is the symbolic importance of this book. As the editor of that, I'm quite proud of myself and the team that was behind it, being able to put this together. The second thing is the importance, the uniqueness of this book, because normally when you have a publication, it is an outcome of a certain conference, a seminar, or set of papers. But the difference here is this seminar we had, thanks to the support and the initiation of the US Embassy, was a dynamic conversation. So here the US is introducing President Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy. And here also at the same time, we on the same platform, we have a set of South Asianists creating a bit of a not a counter argument, but a response to how small states like Sri Lanka, small states like Bangladesh, how small states like Nepal bears the impact of such strategies. So it is a unique stage. It was what we had last year. That's a unique thing. So it also kind of bodes well with the idea of, of people, partnerships, openness, accepting diversity. So it's a result of that. So the book is part of a dynamic conversation, which is responding to a evolving issue, as well as creating the key architect's perspective, as well as the perspectives of countries which are really going to experience that in our of the region. So it is very important for scholars, for students, and even for policy practitioners to see both sides of that in one publication. So that is the uniqueness of the book. But the most important aspect is, beyond the symbolism and the uniqueness, is the actual timing the book came out of the conversation. I just heard Admiral Gurmatato twice speaking about the seas and the allusion to seas and oceans, because of course he has his bias as a Navy man. And the naval officers are breaking up. But the kind of the analogy I had been hearing these days about modern times is that we are in a terrible storm. Again to the sea, sir. We are talking about the seas and the oceans. And we are not just one, everybody is in that storm. And everybody is facing the same storm, but in different vessels. But this book, the authors are trying to say, hey, we are in the same storm, but most of us are in smaller vessels. The bigger vessels have a better chance. Smaller vessels, the people in the smaller vessels feel the ride more bumpier. They are more vulnerable. They may sink. So what the book and the authors from the South Asian side is saying is that it's great to be part of this, but when we are living in a time of a storm, and when we know the storm generator is not a result of the shock and awe of Mother Nature, the storm generator is probably the strategies that are coming out as part of a big power rivalry. We are okay with that. We understand. We understand the operational strategic importance of great powers and their interests, yes. But hey, we are also there. So the authors are saying, from a Sri Lankan perspective, mostly in the publication, but in the conference there are other South Asians, what we require is we also want to practically, beyond the narratives, beyond the rhetorics, we want to feel that the prospectus. We want to be part of the prosperity. We are not just thinking of wiggle room or breathing space. We want something tangible. So I think, Madam Ambassador, Admiral, my friends from the diplomatic community I think most of these countries have their Indo-Pacific strategies of themselves. I think the book is saying, from Sri Lankan perspective, we acknowledge the RV and we understand, and we of course also respect the fact that you understand it through a shared value. So let's make it work. Let's make it operational. Make these chapters sets of windows that you guys can look in and see our perspective. So that is, I think, an ultimate responsibility of a Sri Lankan Defense University and a Strategic Studies Department. So I should finally commend not just to mention, there is a vote of thanks, but I want to mention the guy who's doing the vote of thanks, who was my key ally, my collaborator, Dr. Sanath De Silva, because he won't be thanked by anyone. So I wanted to say thank you, big thank you to Dr. Sanath De Silva and the team of co-editors behind it, Pradeep Ranavira, Viran Madhumage, Lieutenant Colonel Amar Sekara, who was the overall project manager, and all the students who backed us up. Right? The students did a big role, so they are our future leaders, and most of our civilian students are girls, Madam Ambassador. So the ladies' leadership, of course, women, peace, security, all these things, we are doing it actually. So I, as the editor, should acknowledge their services, and I should thank each and everyone in my department, as well as the Faculty of Defense and Strategic Studies, though we are the Strategic Studies Department, we are part of the larger Faculty of Defense and Strategic Studies, so I should mention the Dean Colonel Pradeep Ratnayaka and all the officers in the faculty as supporting this event. So thank you so much for coming over. I hope you take a good glance at the book and give us some reviews. And also, from a KDU perspective, let this not be a standalone. Let us do more. Let us contribute to the conversation, the dialogues. Hopefully, we might contribute to the betterment of all people in our region. So make it a real shared vision for real outcomes. Thank you so much.